We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
This crusade, this war on terrorism is going to take a while.
We came, we saw, he died.
We tortured some folks.
The love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Dave versus Goliath. This is episode 5, and we got a special one today. Guys, I got my first guest on the show. He's a friend of mine. He's a true maverick. He's a revolutionary. He's a good man. He is the founder of the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus. He is the great Michael Heise. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Dude, it is an honor to have you. Thank you, man. You're my very, very first guest on episode 5 of the show. So yeah, you're patient zero, man. Thank you.
Yeah, that is etched in like the blockchain, dude. That's great.
That's right, man. I appreciate it. Dude, I think we got to start at the beginning. So for my viewers, if there are any, and for the people who don't know you, tell us what was your red pill moment, man? How'd you get your start in all this madness?
So the red pill moment for me, like obviously I'm known for I would say the main thing I'm known for is like obviously the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, but like I was red pilled before I was explicitly libertarian, although I would say I was always a liberty guy even when I was first got red pilled. The thing that originally red pilled me, honestly, was Loose Change, the documentary Loose Change,
my man.
With 9/11 Truth, and I guess it's just my personality type. But I started watching that stuff, and I was in high school at the time, and I remember pretty much taking that stuff with me to high school, and talking to people about it and talking about all the different aspects of it, and jet fuel can't melt steel beams and all this stuff, and basically people would tell me I'm crazy, and I'm kind of a stubborn person, so I'm like I don't think so. I don't think I'm crazy, and so I basically just would double down and start reading more and watching more documentaries and cross-referencing more things, and eventually it got to the point where I came in and I would, be going into it. And after a couple of months of me doing my own research and then still being told I'm crazy, I'm like, well, how much fucking time are you putting in? You know what I mean? Like, cause I'm putting in some time, and I would say some of my first acts of activism emerged out of that. Cause like at the time you could create Facebook pages that like the name was anything. You know what I mean? Like you could have anonymous accounts and stuff like that. So like I actually created a Facebook account that was called 9/11 was, and then last name and inside job. And I basically made this anonymous page, and I started creating my own notes, like my own study notes and stuff like that. And I don't know if you remember documents on Facebook. They're still there, but they're useless.
Yeah.
And so I would create my own notes and put that stuff forward. And I would post documentaries, I would post news stories, I would post just everything related to that topic. And I did it for, a couple of years until some of my friends was like, that's you, isn't it? Because I was doing this stuff and then basically going in and friend requesting a bunch of people from school and trying to be like anonymous. And, and
how come you didn't want to be known?
Oh, because I was trying to. It's like the Batman thing, you know what I mean? Like right. I was trying to be an idea. Like, you can tell Michael Heise's crazy, but you can't tell.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, buddy.
Yeah, I would say it started with that, with that, and I remember the documentary in 2008, Freedom to Fascism, and that was like another one, like another step in the whole thing. And same thing. I started debating, my coworkers and shit about. the legality of the income tax and all of that. And I think it might have been Freedom to Fascism where I first saw Ron Paul, but I didn't know who he was. And I would say in 2008, I remember seeing a YouTube video. It was like a mishmash. It was like a mashup of Ron Paul clips from 2008 as the campaign was going on, and it was set to Don McLean's American Pie. And that's when I first got into Ron Paul, and I first got into more libertarian ideas. I encountered Ron Paul in the 2008 campaign, but I didn't know anybody. And like, the world is so different. You know what I mean? Like, I was a kid. I was living at home. It was like, the situation was like, we had a computer in the living room that we all used that had dial-up internet.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, so the networks and the communities and stuff weren't like that. And even if they were, I didn't know where the hell to go. Like, I remember at the time, my buddy Kyle worked at Udo's, and he was like, yeah, man, there was all these guys that came in, and they were all about Ron Paul. And I'm like, did you talk to him? He's like, no. And I'm like, what the hell? Turns out it was a meetup group, and we didn't know what the hell meetup was. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so fast forward, you know, I kind of go further down the Ron Paul thing, and I go further down, you know, some of the conspiracy theory, Alex Jones stuff. I was an Alex Jones, like, InfoWars listener for a really long time. And, you know, people forget, like, we're spoiled now, you know, like, people forget that, like, in the early 2000s and, like, I would say even through to 2012, it's not like today where there's the libertarian podcast market is completely oversaturated. That was a ridiculous, absurd idea back then. It was basically Alex Jones, Bill Cooper, if you were real hardcore, and that's it. Like, there wasn't really that much stuff. And
and he gave Ron Paul, I'd say, a considerable amount of time.
Oh yeah.
So were you around for the whole Ron Paul revolution of 2008, or was it a little bit after that, or was it like...
It was more like, not the whole thing, no, and it was very much so a sideline thing at that point.
Okay. That's kind of where I was at the time, too. I don't know if I was ready for that. I was still hating George Bush and the Republican Party. And
right.
I fell to the left a little bit.
And I was more conspiratorial than I was political, and I was also... I graduated that year from high school. I was extremely angry and depressed at the time, so like I was kind of locked up in my own head.
More common denominators there, my friend. I'm taking notes.
So as time went on, we kind of get into the 2011 time where it was like Ron's going to run again.
Right.
And I remember like hearing about it that he was going to run again before he ran, and I remember thinking we have to do something this time. Like we have to do something. So, you know, what we did is you got to understand, like, my friends, I wasn't really into this, but I went with them. Like, my friends were, like, graffiti artists and shit. You know what I mean? Like, we would go out at 2 a.m. and, like, hit bridges and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So what we did is I just remember getting, like literally going out behind Kmart, getting cardboard boxes, breaking them down, spray painting like End the Fed on them or Infowars.com on them, and putting them in trees around town in Thorndale, Pennsylvania. So like our backyards, there was like a hill and then a highway up at the top of that hill. And so it got to the point where my buddy Kyle got these 3 like 6x6 pieces of wood and posted them up along the highway, and it was like Infowars.com. And what ended up happening is our mutual friend Keith, he was driving down the highway one day. He saw those 3 signs, and he came up in a crazy truth household too. And he got off at the next exit, found his way to the road that I lived on that ran parallel with that highway, and then he stopped at my buddy's Kyle's house, parked there, and said, "Well, the guy with that huge garden out in his front yard has got to be the guy that." You know, and sure enough, it was. And so we met Keith, and we thought he was a Fed. And I mean, because seriously, think about it. Some random guy knocks on,
Hey, fellow kids, I noticed you were libertying. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I asked him, like, I remember asking him, like, are you a Fed? And he thought that was just hilarious. He was like, you guys are the real deal.
It's a great first question. Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And he ended up taking us to this dude's house who was like the head of the Ron Paul meetup crew in the county. And that's where I got more involved with that, and that's why I started doing. Like, there's still old videos of me like bullhorning on the side of the highway at like big intersections and shit like that.
Let's take a detour right there, man. That's how I met you in the great city of Philadelphia during the Occupy Wall Street days. You were down in the middle of the park there when all the tents were out with your bullhorn that I'm pretty sure had Revolution on one side and InfoWars on the other. Pretty sure. I could be wrong on that.
I still got it up there, yeah.
Okay, bam. That's
yeah.
This is great.
It's signed by Alex Jones and Ron Paul.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
You got it, man. So yeah, that's where we met. I saw you yelling about End the Fed, and this was when I had just, I think, maybe started to really take interest in Ron Paul and libertarianism, because I think I was looking, after years, like you said, of being in that conspiratorial space and, just angry at, the man or the machine. It was ready to put some names and faces on these people and understand
and some philosophies to it. Yeah.
Right. That was the necessary next step. So that's why I think, man, this is why. And when people ask me, I know this is not the technical term. They ask me, okay, tell me what's the difference between the Mises Caucus and the rest of the Libertarian Party or the other caucuses. And I just say red pills and Ron Paul. And I know that's definitely not in the description, and there's other ways you could talk about it, and your roots.
It's not inaccurate. It's not. Here's where things got really crazy in the story is I met Keith. And at the same time that I met Keith, like I said, at this point, me and my buddy Kyle, it was really only us for like ever. And we knew we had to do something this time around. And I actually have on video the first time I ever bullhorned, period. Like, me and Kyle got a bullhorn, drove down to Philly, and we were out in front of the Federal Reserve building, and I was bullhorning the First Amendment Center about the Federal Reserve. And you can tell I was green because as soon as one of the security guards walks up, I stop. You know what I mean? Like, and right. I'm scared and shit. And
you understood.
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't. I actually didn't understand anything yet. I was scared, and
you understood.
I see. Yeah.
Hashtag
yeah. I didn't get to overstand yet. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. So did that kind of stuff, and then that was like the first End the Fed that I did, if you even want to call it that. And then I remember setting up another End the Fed, and maybe at that time, maybe 8 people came out, and then I did another one, and then there was like 50 people at that one, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Yeah, and it was completely random. You know what I mean? Like, from my perspective, and turns out what I bumped into was there was this underground world of activists, and called Truth, Freedom, Prosperity, that was headed up by a dude named Michael Salvi. And
really quick,
it was just this...
Michael Salvi is the reason that I did not put liberty or libertarian in the name of my podcast. Because he said, again, I just saw him say one time, his podcast was called Mike Salvi's World, and he was like, I only have to answer for me. And I was like, that makes really great sense, especially in our community, man, where everybody is like, no, I don't think you're you're not the thing.
Yeah.
I'm Dave, baby. Yeah, I'm just talking about me.
and Truth, Freedom, Prosperity was awesome, man, because it like, you had James Babb in there, you had Mark Passio in there, you had Mike Salvi in there. There was this crazy mishmash of like survivalists and Tesla freaks and small L libertarians and conspiracy theorists and like, it was just this weird, like, hippies, like it was just this weird mishmash of people that we all came together, and then that all that energy was focused into Ron Paul, and that was the first time that I ever got networked. So fast forward, we're in Occupy Philly. We had the Ron Paul tent. So I meet up with that underground crew. We ended up having a Ron Paul tent in some of the best ground space in Occupy Philly. Met a lot more people. That's where I met N.A. Poe and a whole bunch of people. And at that time, again, I was so green that I didn't understand left and right. I didn't understand that this was like a totally opposed movement to what I was at the time. I just knew that at one point they shat in our tent, and I was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like,
who shat in your tent?
Some commie.
Oh, man.
I don't know who. So it was like, we had survivalists with us. So like these people were all in like cheap Kmart tents, and we had like a built to code wooden structure with like kerosene and shit.
You weren't meant to blend in there. It was like the Ron Paul tent, and the Fed tent, and then the rest.
Oh
yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And but they couldn't really do anything because the same survivalist that built the 2 code thing, the structure, was like somehow supplying them with like a shitload of food. You know what I mean? Like and you know, he had his own networks, and basically we were running shifts. Like I was working and going to school during the week, and then living on the streets in the weekend, talking to people, talking about the Federal Reserve and Ron Paul and all this shit. And inviting people into our structure and having tea and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and
that's it. You guys invited us in for tea. We talked about ending the Fed and Ron Paul.
There you go. Yeah. And we had shifts. And basically one night, one guy got caught alone. So we had the structure, and then we had another tent where if somebody needed to sleep, they could. He went to sleep. Commies came in, stole all of our shit, and shat in the tent.
Oh.
Like shat in the structure. So like, yeah.
That's why we can't have nice things in the middle of the
Yeah, fuck commies, dude. And
that was my first introduction to that.
Exactly.
And ever since then, I've been like, fuck commies.
So then towards the end of the whole Ron Paul thing, I organized a nationwide End the Fed rally at all of the Federal Reserve branches and sub-branches combined at the same time. And it was like live streamed out of most of them. I remember I got a video from Stephen Molyneux about the Federal Reserve at that time. And, you know, things were a little different with him at the time. Sure. And yeah, so that got me, I landed an interview with Ron Paul right before he left office. You know, and I kind of asked him about 9/11 truth, and I asked him about anarchism, and that's kind of where I became an anarchist. And so then from like 2013, like right after that interview to, I would say about 2000, well, I guess, how long was it? Basically, I kind of drifted at that point. I did some cop blocking. I did some podcasting. I did some, man on the street.
You were on with Adam Kokesh there for a while, right?
Yeah, I lived with Kokesh for at the end of 2012 to like March of 2013, when Adam versus the Man was like at its peak.
Yeah, we got to give it up to him for just a second, regardless of what you think about him now, anybody or whatever. I mean, that was pretty foundational.
The dance party at TJ's video,
dude,
man.
That was one of the greatest things I've ever seen online.
Yeah.
So shout out to Adam Kokesh for that. We need more content like that still.
So I kind of, like I said, I kind of just drifted. I took, as I call it, the shotgun approach. I did some cop blocking. I did some writing. I did some podcasting. I did some man on the street stuff, and just did this for a while until about 2014, maybe. 2014, I basically had like a personal tragedy befall me, and it just took me out of the game for like a year and a half. Like I just didn't have the heart. And when I came back is as we were starting to get into the 2015 election cycle, like just the very beginning. Like I remember I was going to write a series of articles on, like it was going to be called The Dirt on Blank, and the idea was to go on all of the candidates. So like the dirt on Trump, even the dirt on Rand, and everything. But ultimately, I was hoping that Rand Paul would be able to recapture the magic of the Ron Paul thing. That absolutely did not happen. It just, yeah. What's that?
That was sad.
Yeah, it did not work out at all. And he missed all of his opportunities, and he didn't understand the moment, like in the way that he tried to oppose Trump, and it didn't work. It just didn't work. And so once that fizzled out, and we're only at the beginning of the campaign cycle, it's like, well, what the fuck do I do now? You know, and I never actually entertained the idea of the Libertarian Party before that, because like most other libertarians, I was like, well, it's a fucking joke. Right. It's dumb. You know what I mean? Like, and all that stuff. So I said, all right, well, I guess I'll check it out. I don't know. And at this time, as I was easing my way back into things, I knew I didn't want to do the shotgun approach anymore. Like, I knew I wanted to pick something. I didn't know what it was, but I wanted to pick something and stick with it long term and just make that the thing. And so came into the party. I supported John McAfee in the primary.
Me too.
And yeah, I would say those campaign videos that Judd Weiss made are still like really, really good. And he was the most radical. I mean, he really went off the reservation after that cycle, but he was the most radical. He was the most consistent. He was the most bold. He was all the things that I look for. Not perfect. But once Johnson was officially in the race, I supported McAfee, but I knew it was going to be Johnson.
Right. He's the...
I think everyone kind of knew it was going to be Johnson. Yeah. And again, I was just kind of...
in 2012, right? In Tampa? Right, that was my first experience with Gary Johnson, was at the end of that weekend where we all knew it wasn't going to be Ron Paul and they stole it from him. The Libertarian Party had a tent at that festival, and Gary Johnson got to give a speech that was like, when you're done with your revolution, I'd certainly enjoy your vote.
Because I remember his thing was like, be libertarian, like be libertarian with me once. I remember that was twice. A big thing. I remember Lou, that was the first time I ever saw Lou Rockwell. Was at Paul Fest, and I didn't know who he was at that point, and that's when I kind of started going down the more Mises Institute rabbit hole, and that Paul Fest down in Tampa, dude. That was when I had my first Secret Service encounter.
Excellent. Yeah, they were all over the place.
Yeah, I've had 2 Secret Service encounters and an FBI encounter.
I remember you told me about what was the FBI one about? Was that a tweet you made or a Facebook post?
That was a Facebook post. That was a Facebook post. They showed up to my house not long after I got back from Kokesh's, and they talked to my dad. And I was not going down to the office. You know what I mean? So I called him back, and I actually have the phone call with that FBI agent on YouTube from back in the day. And basically the way I was going to handle it is I'm going to call this guy. I'm going to tell him I'm recording. If he's okay with that, I'm probably okay, and we'll just see how it goes. If he's not okay with that, I'm immediately hanging up, and we have to get a lawyer, and this is not good. And he was okay with it. So, but yeah, it was just about a Facebook post that I made promoting an End the Fed rally and a Smoke Down Prohibition, which is basically a weed civil disobedience event, like an open get high at the First Amendment Center event going on in the same day. And they came to my house.
Successful in Philly, man. Shout out to Poe for that, and all you guys for putting in that work, man.
That's why you got. Oh, it wasn't me, man. That was all Poe and Les Stark and Mike Whiter and all those guys. That great, yeah. I haven't really kept in touch with those guys, but yeah, that was all them. I was just there. I have a video screaming at the cops from one of those, calling them Nazis. It's pretty embarrassing now. You know, I mean, screaming.
Everybody was throwing that around. That's, it actually was something.
Yeah. In hindsight, it's embarrassing because I really lost it. I'm surprised I didn't get arrested. But I mean, dude, they sick fucking riot police on us at a weed civil disobedience event.
Yeah, that's what they do.
But yeah, so fast forward, Rand Paul fizzles out, not working, don't know what to do. I'm dipping my toe into the LP, and the first sign that this might work for me was I put together a End the Fed rally, which we have a rich history of doing End the Fed rallies in front of the Federal Reserve Building in Philly. Mm-hmm. This was in 2017 now. And I had never, we had done a whole bunch of them, but we never tied it to the LP or anything like that. So I had Dale Kearns, who was running for Senate, host it. I had Larry Sharp out. I had Kokesh out. I had Murray Sabrin, who is... Murray Sabrin knew Rothbard. He was friends with Rothbard. He's an OG in the movement, author, professor, just a great guy. And brought him out. I had never met him before. We had Keith talk about Bitcoin and crypto, and 300 people showed up. And I was like,
I was there.
Yeah.
It was great. It was a good one.
That was where Phil Labonte came out.
It was beautiful.
From All That Remains.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, maybe this can work. And I had been tossing around the idea of the Mises Caucus for a while, and it was almost just the Ron Paul Caucus.
That was that's my vote, but again, I had never heard the name Mises before. You had to introduce me to a lot of names, man.
Ron Paul captures the energy I'm going for probably better than Mises, but there'd be no Mises, there'd be no Ron Paul without Mises. And Ron Paul personally says that in some of these old pamphlets that he wrote. And I mean, in one of these old pamphlets, he talks about how one of Mises' last in-person speeches, Ron drove 6 hours to attend, and that was it. I think there's actually audio of that out there.
Nice.
And he actually credited Mises, the example of Mises' character and the confidence that he gained in the Austrian school itself. He said is what kept him sane all those years. In the daily circus, as he put it, in Washington.
Yeah.
So at that point, it was just kind of an idea. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or even how to do it. I've never been politically involved. Even when I was doing Ron Paul shit, I wasn't involved with the campaign. I was involved in this underground crew that was like adjacent to the campaign.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I didn't know what I was doing. And then, as fate would have it, the same day that I said, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to make this Facebook group, the chair of the party calls Tom Woods and the Mises Institute Nazis. And so I wake up the next day and there's like 600 people in the Facebook group organically. I didn't do anything. And I'm like, okay, wow. And that's kind of been how this whole experience has been. It's just like providential shit keeps happening. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That was I got to tell you, man, that was a motivator for me. When you called one day and you were like, yeah, man, have you ever thought about getting involved with the Libertarian Party? And I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. And I just assumed that it was filled with Ron Paul heads because that's all I had known about libertarianism. And you were like, no, man, have you ever heard of a guy named Nick Sarwark? And I was like, nope, which I should have because I was calling myself a libertarian, but I didn't know this guy who had been leading the party for 4 years, I'm sure, at that point. Oh, yeah, man, he's fucking talking shit on Tom Woods, Ron Paul. Like, you got to be kidding me. The leader of the Libertarian Party? That makes no sense. So, yeah, I found that just absolutely absurd.
Sweet naivety.
Right. Oh, man. I was like, well, dude, they're called the Libertarian Party, so I'm pretty sure that party's going to be ethical and moral and everything's going to be pretty sweet in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was expecting the same thing. And then it's like, oh, you hate me because I'm a Ron Paul guy? Like, this is absurd.
Right.
And I remember when that all first started, Nick Sarwark was actually in the Facebook group at the beginning. And I remember he was pretty quick to reach out to me and get my number. And I remember being like, dude, this isn't like a hater club. It's this, this, and this. Look, join the group. You'll see. It's like,
wow, that's more diplomacy than I thought was ever there. That's pretty nice.
I mean, this is the very, very beginning. This is before I knew. I knew it didn't take long before I realized he was like reptilian, but I didn't know at that point. And so I was really trying. I'm the new guy on the block. I don't know who the fuck anybody is. I'm just finding my way. And the chair of the party is taking an interest in this little Facebook group that I'm doing, and you know what I mean? Like
that must have been pretty neat.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, yeah. And then I saw how he was, and he was booted from the group, and yeah.
Right. And then Josh went after him, right? Was that pretty much how the order of operations? Did Josh start to run for chair?
We didn't really get behind Josh at first, actually, because I kept trying to, as I termed it, throw these Hail Marys. Like, there was a whole bunch of cool shit that happened right at the beginning, and like again, our mutual friend Keith, he was actually a big part of, he gave me some opportunities that ended up really helping to blow this thing up and helping me network. Like, I got the opportunity to go to the Mises 35th anniversary event in New York. Now, that wasn't Keith, but he got me to go out to the Nexus conference in Aspen, and I met Judge Knapp, I met Ron Paul, I met Jesse Ventura, I met all these people, and I pitched it to them, and it's really, in hindsight, it's kind of absurd because it wasn't anything at the time, like at all. It was just an idea that I was passionate about, and people entertained it like I was serious. Like, I remember I reached out to Pat Byrne, I didn't even, who is the former CEO of Overstock. We weren't a PAC or anything like that at that point. I didn't even ask him for money, and he just sent us $5,000.
Amazing.
And yeah, and I'm like, wow, what is happening? And yeah, so it just kept going and going and going. And the more, like, I don't know how else to describe it other than to say that this whole thing has felt like there is a path opening up in front of me, and I'm trying to run down it, and the more I run down it, the more it opens up.
Yeah.
And so the more that, and it just keeps opening up. And as long as I have faith in that, it seems to actually happen, which is really weird. And we could start getting into the Peterson thing at some point, because that was, if Ron Paul was the first big influence on me and inspiration and everything, Jordan Peterson is certainly the second.
Right. And you have met him too. That's correct?
I have met him, and I actually, well, I can't say that. I almost spilled some information. I can't. You'll see that it'll come out. It'll come out right. It'll come out soon enough.
I'm gonna need that exclusive.
Like Jordan Peterson is not a liberty guy. He does espouse liberty, but libertarianism or liberty is not his primary thing.
Right.
In fact, he is an opponent to ideology generally. But he does openly identify as he calls himself a British classical liberal, and so he is
part of that. Do you know?
Like John Locke, all that shit. You know what I mean? Like just the tradition of classical liberalism and the thinkers emerged there. So yeah, he's not a liberty guy, even though he does espouse libertarian. I don't want to say libertarianism, liberty ideals. He is an absolute proponent of the sovereignty of the individual. He's an absolute proponent for free speech. Even as a Canadian, he's a proponent of the people should be equally armed to the military. All these little things. He just doesn't espouse the ideology because he is a kind of an opponent to ideology generally. And I that's something I've really learned, because one of the worst things that I've learned through the whole Jordan Peterson thing is like the concept of ideological possession. Because it's one of those things that now that I understand, I can see it everywhere, and I saw it in myself in the past. Like, I was totally an ideologue when I was doing the coke-ass shit. I was oversimplifying my worldview to fit my ideology, so therefore I could sound like I had an answer to everything, and it's not that simple.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not that simple. Because in some way, it's almost paradoxical. I've thought about this. Is libertarianism an ideology, or is it a true statement on the nature of human interaction and the order that emerges out of the chaos when people are free to? And I think it's a little bit of both.
Right.
But if you
said, I'll never forget it, man. And this is probably going back 100 or more shows. He goes, libertarianism is beautiful in its simplicity, but it doesn't tell you how to treat your girlfriend other than don't hit her.
Right.
So there's so much more to life, meaning it's a beautiful legal philosophy. But you have a lot more to learn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, your political philosophy is only one part of your worldview.
Right.
And
don't get
another thing that's been right. And there's another thing that I've learned is that people act out other things than their political philosophy in greater priority than their political philosophy.
Like
people act out their
preferences.
Their cultural preferences and their biases and stuff like that, and so you have to try to figure out how to navigate that in a way that is maximizing to the freedom message. Right. And it's so interesting because, like, basically in a nutshell, that was the point that Jeff Deist was trying to make with this speech that he did a few years ago, where at the end, I mean, it's a completely common sense point. Like, he at the end, and he got so much shit for it, where he was like, the whole blood and soil thing.
Yeah.
All he said was that, we have to take account for the fact that blood and soil and God and country matter to people, or as to say, people aren't self-immolating for weed legalization. People aren't saying, Allah Akbar, explode, lower taxes. You know what I mean? Like that's just not the shit that motivates people on that extremely deep level to get to that point. The shit that moves people is their family, their culture, their country, their religion. You know what I mean? Like, and that is kind of clear going back through time, and we have to take that into account if we want to appeal to real people and not just like nerds like us. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I think it's common sense. Of course, it was twisted to try to attack him for nothing, but yeah, I think it's absolutely common sense.
So should we be, as libertarians, should we be engaging in the culture war more then?
Depends on what you mean by it. I think we have to engage in it to the extent that it is real, that real people are in it, they're speaking their ideas through the filter of their cultural preferences, and we have to deal with that. So I think we have to engage in it, but we don't have to pick a side.
Right.
We have to, and I totally agree with Dave Smith on this. We have to point out how the culture war that they're so worried about is being fueled by the centrality of power that the government has. And basically that the culture war is a political war, because again, I remember when I was an idiot libertarian, like a new libertarian, and I was like, yeah, the left and the right don't exist. That's fake. That's not true. There's actually huge overlap in political political mindset orientation, worldview, political orientation, and personality type are all closely related.
I believe it.
And that's rough. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot to unpack in that. And because we want to simplify it and just say, oh well, if we just deal with the ideas, we can win, and that's true. But there's the filter that you have to put on the ideas, because again, people are speaking their ideas, but they're not speaking their ideas as if that's their primary value. They're speaking their ideas through the filter of their cultural preferences and shit like that, because people act that out in higher priority than their political philosophy. That's and that's why a big reason why I think you see the left is obsessed with power, and then the right is full of shit, because the right is more worried about beating the left, regardless of how hollow the victory is, than actually achieving small government or conserving anything. They haven't conserved anything in over 60 years. And whereas the left, their ideas are animated by their well, I think this is true across the board, but their ideas are animated by their emotional positions. So like Mises has this book, The Anti-Capitalistic Mentality, and going to oversimplify here, but I'm sure you've heard the phrase like socialism is animated by envy. Mm-hmm. Well, if you step back and that's true, but if you step back for a second, there's a point that's in that statement that we take for granted that's really important, which is to say ideologies are animated by underlying attitudinal or emotional dispositions.
Right. And that's what the governments take advantage of, and that's why they try to influence culture. Right? Okay. Right.
Well, because, again, people care more about the culture. So if you can lead the culture like with a breadcrumb trail in order to get the desired political ends that you want, and that's how you can, like, one of the ways that you control society, then that's what they do. What has happened in so many years of this happening is now there's so much power in the hands of particularly the executive branch, regardless of who it is, that for one culture side and personality type side or whatever, to lose that is almost like an existential crisis, because politics has become so central to our society.
Right.
And so that's what the culture war is. It's two people battling, it's like a mutual hostage situation. Like it's two groups of people battling to not be the cultural minority as dictated by who holds the power.
Right. It took a while to get there, but we're definitely there.
Yeah.
So, catch me up to speed. So, in present day, 4 years after you started this caucus...
3.5.
3.5, excuse me. Yeah, summer, right? Of
August.
2017? Yeah, that's right. I'm pretty sure I was in there day one, maybe day two.
Well, to back up a little bit, like you said, so we started in late 2017, and then 2018 was our first convention. So essentially we went from 0 to, I think it was like 22% of the delegation in 2018, the first time that Josh ran.
Yeah. That's huge.
And then,
first time around, we're the Mises Caucus, 22% of the delegation. Is that right?
Right. Awesome. And you keep in mind, there was no PAC. There was no even like idea of a PAC. The concept, honestly, I don't even remember what the hell we were doing back then in some case, because I remember we wanted to do like state organizers, but it was a lot of time and a lot of work. And I remember saying after we lost, I think I even made a post on Facebook where I said, all right, here's where I failed. And I knew that the state organizer thing was the thing, like that was the thing that we have to get straight. So like from 18 to 20, we did that, but it was really, really hard to like get these organizers to work the back end and work the system. And
I was one of those organizers that was hard to get to work.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And it was a wide scale thing, dude. I think it was like something like only a quarter of the organizers were actually organizing. So by the time we got to the 2020 convention, even though it was only a quarter of the organizers were organizing, we produced a 40% result. And I think our email list was at like 35 or 3,700 people at that time as well. So we did so much better than we thought we were going to do, given the circumstances. I thought we were going to get completely like railroaded by corruption. I thought it was going to be a massacre. I was really not feeling good when I got on the plane to go down to Orlando for that at all. Like I was already thinking about how am I going to keep this together? How am I going to keep the morale together? Before we even got to the convention. And got to the convention, Josh lost, but he lost 60-40, which is pretty good. Yeah. I mean, we went from 0 to 22, 22 to 40. And at that point, the PAC was brand new. Like, we're coming up on 2 years. Yeah, 2 years, I think, that the PAC was filed. We had maybe a $17,000 budget on, like, getting materials around the country and getting Airbnbs and the whole mobilization effort. And that produced a 40% result, but then we got a whole bunch of other victories. This is something the detractors don't want to admit. They say, you lose everything. It's like, we didn't lose Karen Ann Harless. We didn't lose Ken Rollman. We didn't lose Eric Rodsep. We didn't lose, there's at least one or two others. Almost got Jacob Lamont, vice chair. Yeah, we got like 4 or 5 victories. We got everybody but one on the judicial committee that we had voted for. And, we slapped back some socialist stuff, and we had more victories than they thought. But what really dawned on me in 2020 was, so the night that Josh lost, that was the only piece of business that was handled that whole day. It was absolutely ridiculous how that convention went down. That the chairs race was the only piece of business that whole day. Meaning there was no indication that things were going to go well the next day.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, as we get to the rest of the business. That's kind of where my mind was at. And so we threw a big party at one of our Airbnbs. And I get there, and I'm not feeling too good. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how the morale is going to be, blah, blah, blah. And people are having a great fucking time. People are doing drinking games. Shit's like live, and nobody was upset. There wasn't anybody saying, I wasted my fucking time coming down here and this is all stupid and blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of what I was expecting. So we threw a rager, and that's where I really, for the first time, was like, oh shit, our culture is real. Like our culture is real and strong. Right. And then we came in the next day and we won a whole bunch of shit. And we are the ones that crafted the a motion that had to happen, because again, that was the 2 days of the convention had only passed and only one piece of business was taken, which is the chairs race. So we had to produce a motion to basically grease the wheels and say, we've got to blast through as much business as we can tomorrow. And so I won't go into all the details, but we over that night, we wrote a motion to achieve that, got that passed, and we got several victories, and everybody by the end was like, wow, we did a really good job. Wow, 40%. I mean, just to put it in perspective, the delegation is like 1,015 people, 1,010 people, something like that. So 60-40, there's only like 110 people between those two. Like, between those two outcomes. 110 delegates. It's not much. So people were overjoyed with how we've gone. And then in the time after that, I would say, is where Dave has really, 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 really put skin in the game, and taken up cause with us and put his platform on the line and put his name on the line. That has produced that has produced an absolute explosion. Yeah. I mean, our email list, like I said, we were making at our peak, we were making about $5,000 a month at the time that the convention happened, and that produced like a $17,000 budget plus operating costs that in the time since the convention, which was July, we're in early April now, the email list has more than tripled. We're making $13,500 a month. I'm about to go full time.
In under 4 years, going full time, from jumping at any gig that came across your plate to finding and making your own, to making that your career and your life's mission, dude. It's just so awesome.
Yeah, it's. I kind of don't believe it, to be honest with you. It's going to take me a couple of months, I think, like of actually doing that to believe it. But the bad news for everybody else is I'm going to be a full-time employee for basically a year leading up to the 22 convention. I mean, that's just trouble.
If you couldn't handle Mikey Heise at his part-time, he gonna fuck you up full-time. Damn.
Exactly. Our email list is tripled. I think we had like, just using all of our metrics and our automations and shit like that, I think our email list of what we call potential delegates was about 400 or 500 or something going into the convention. We have 1,600. 1,600.
Yeah. Poised for a takeover, or we can call it whatever you want. The insurrection.
Yeah. I don't care. I don't care talking about calling it a takeover. It is a takeover. It's a libertarian takeover of the Libertarian Party that's been run like a social club.
Now, is that
basically if you?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that I just kind of want to hit home the reason that the caucus needs to exist. Like, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, why the party? When did it, if it got derailed, or if it got corrupt, or if it became inept? When did that happen? And
so where it hit a peak in the early 2000s with Harry Brown. Like Harry Brown ran twice, and it hit a peak of membership and everything in the early 2000s. 9/11 did a number on the party, and
people
then
went to their respective blue and red corners and stuck it out there, right?
Yeah, but then after that, the Prags actually. So what we call the Prags, or the moderates, or the milquetoasts, or listen up, everybody. the not warriors. Like those kind of people. They took over the party themselves.
Right.
In 2004, there was an extremely low attended convention in Portland, and it's called the Portland Massacre, and that's where the revisionists, as opposed to the abolitionists, came in and gutted the platform of its radicalism. And it's been on a downward spiral more or less ever since then. Like, that's where all of the really... I mean, Michael Badnarik was the last radical candidate that we had, and he was radical, but he was also pretty quirky. Like, he was a sovereign citizen, for example, that kind of shit. And but then after that is where we got like Wayne Allen Root, Bob Barr, Gary Johnson, Bill Weld. They tried to do Lincoln Chafee, and so actually one of the main goals, like, I would even say catalyst for the Mises Caucus, was I had a literal nightmare one night. Like, I had an actual night terror of Bill Weld getting the nomination and being on a podium in front of like a sea of people, and there's all these TV cameras. Like, he made the debates or something, and it was just him being him and being like, yes, American people, this is what liberty is about. And I fucking woke up and it was like, that can't happen. That just can't happen.
Right? Yeah.
The word will die. The word will die. And we don't have much.
Right.
You know what I mean? And people could say, oh, well, who cares about the word? Well, a lot of those people who say that also say what we were talking about earlier about how important culture is. Well, what's an important aspect of culture? Language. So, like, if we don't have our own language, we don't have our own words, we don't have our own identity, we're not going to have a fucking culture, let alone anything else. You know what I mean? Like, and so that was the big thing that one of the big things that really spurred me into it. And then another big thing that really spurred me into it again was Jordan Peterson. I watched at the very beginning of this, because for me, this was at the very beginning. I wasn't sure what this was going to be. I didn't know if it was worth it. I didn't know if the LP was a vehicle, like all this stuff. And then I watched Jordan's Bible lectures. And anybody that has not watched Jordan Peterson's Bible lectures, it's a serious time investment, but it's a very worthwhile time investment. I watched those Bible lectures, and I'm telling you, I'm not the same. I was a different person at the end of those Bible lectures than I was at the beginning of it. I just realized, I don't know how to put it. I realized a lot of things. I reconciled a lot of things. And essentially along the way, I made I made a decision, I guess is the best way to put it. But I made a decision that this whole caucus project is essentially my Abrahamic call to adventure. Like, this is what I have to do. That's it, and that's all, and that's it. I'm doing this. And again, ever since I did that, the path has been opening up. I'm chasing it. It keeps opening up, and yeah, it's been really weird.
But it's definitely, I mean, it's all positive at this point, right? I mean, it's everything's coming to bases. It looks like.
Yeah, I get frustrated every once in a while with the bullshit and the haters and the screeching and the racist, homophobe, trans, Semite.
So much crap. I got to tell you, for 4 years I've watched these nerds call you awful names and our pals awful, awful names. And man, I guess that's why, just like Dave Smith has said, when somebody goes after Tom Woods, I'm a pit bull. You know what I mean? I'm kind of the same way.
Right.
So if I've known you for a while, man, I know the kind of person you are. So if somebody goes after Ron Paul in the Libertarian Party, you're dead to me, and I'm gonna fuck you up. You know, it's instant.
It's funny you should mention that. I was just telling somebody else today, I think it was actually, that I'm like, when this job's done, when we, take control of the leadership and start pushing our vision and scaling up our vision, that's going to be like one of my big statements of like, this is all your fault. Like, all you had, like,
this is blowback.
You guys, you just, all you had to do was shut up. Like you had to go and call Ron Paul a racist or a Nazi and all this nonsense. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just not allowing that. Like, that's another motivating thing is I feel like, Ron's 86, 86 years old. He's, at that age, every year you get is a gift. Now, I don't mean to be morbid. He's in good health and everything, but I'm just saying, like, every year at 86 is a gift. The guy's not going to be around too much longer. There's going to come to a point where we can't even have the debate of can we have Ron Paul at the national convention.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and at that point, all that exists is his legacy. And where is that legacy going to live through? It doesn't live through the GOP.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we have to fight for that legacy because it's a really proud one. It's a really worthwhile one. It's a really important one.
Hell yeah.
And we have to be. We're the Ninja Turtles meme. I'm sure you've seen. With Splinter.
Yeah.
But it's accurate. Like, that is our responsibility. We're Ron Paul now.
Look at me.
Yeah.
Bro, I believe you when you say it. That's why I'm in your caucus, man. You could call this caucus whatever you want. Ron Paul caucus, Mises caucus. I'm fucking in it, dude, because I believe you when you speak. And you, like I've told you before, I have faith in you, man. So yeah, nobody's perfect, but if anyone can do it, dude, if anyone can remain uncorrupted, because politics is dirty, you could do it, man.
Well, I will say this: last year we had taken several state parties. This year we have already taken several state parties to the point where I would say we've taken enough, and some of them we have taken in such explosive fashion that the party is in a full-blown identity crisis at the moment, which is good because it's ugly. It's ugly to watch,
right?
But what you're seeing is that it's necessary because it's an identity crisis because the old identity, the old paradigm, the old way of running this thing is fading away, and it's not going to go quietly into the night. It's going to screech racist until it's dead, and that's what's happening. And as that happens, we come in, and it's not like we're coming in and we're the Soviets or some shit. Like, it's not like we're coming in and saying, all right, this is how it's going to be. Like, we do work with everybody. And what happens is, as there's so many of us now, working on the ground level, that they can't ignore us anymore. And there's more and more people who are interacting with us, working with us, getting signatures, doing social media with us, doing all the things. And they're finding out very rapidly that the experience of us is very different from the narrative of us from the people who stand to lose. And so we're coming in, we're taking these parties, we're more productive than they were, we're bringing more people in before, because we're the first things, I mean, if you can believe this, we are the first group of people to come along and say the Libertarian Party should care about the liberty movement first and foremost.
Yeah. It's crazy that and I'm sorry I didn't know it. Somebody had to tell me that. I didn't know that they didn't care, but they didn't. Yeah,
no, they didn't. And in fact, again, I think it's by resentment. I think the underlying thing here, I think if you watch their actions, it all makes sense. If you think that the underlying emotional thing here is resentment, because, let me ask you, you've been in and around the movement for a while. Left libertarians as they exist in the LP, if you even want to call them left libertarians, where in the movement take away the LP? Let's pretend it doesn't exist. Where else in the movement do the woke types have any respect, have any platform, have any accomplishments, have any status, or anything?
Dude, that's what I'm looking for. Anybody. I'm looking for their thought leaders. I can't find any. I don't know.
Right. It doesn't exist. So I think what's happened here is, for a number of reasons, the watering down of the message, a lot of people going GOP to support Ron Paul in 8 and 12, bad leadership, like it's just all this stuff. I think people, low status people or low accomplishment people, and look, I'm not high accomplished. Like the caucus is absolutely my highest accomplishments. But I'm just saying, like, low status people have come in, and I think they feel like the big man because they've got a room of people to vote for them, and I have this position and I have status, and this is the third largest party, and it's just a loser culture.
I think this microcosm, dude, is happening in every single state chapter.
Yeah, one of two things happens is we come in, we meet with the old paradigm, and they either fight us or they recognize, because it's actually not that way in every state. It's just the juiciest, funnest thing to talk about and everything. There's actually a lot of states, though, where we come in, we bring a lot of people, we encounter the old paradigm, and they say, oh, wow, you've got all these people. Oh, wow, you're willing to do shit. I got people who, and I won't name names, they try to pretend like they weren't haters before, but I've got people who were haters before who are now trying to get, like, said, we need to talk. Like, I support the Mises Caucus because, it's only Mises Caucus people that are stepping up in my state. There's people who think that the primary thing that we're doing with the party that is political, and that's wrong.
Let's talk about that, man, because that separates your caucus from the rest too. Touch on that a little bit, dude.
Well, it's funny because I feel like I'm the only person to hear use this word in this way, but it really boils, in my mind, it boils down to faith. It boils down to faith. I think if you use the party as a vehicle and treat that vehicle as if the primary goal is political, you almost can't be taken serious, because if you're going to sit here and say, well, we're a political party and our goal is to win elections, and you never win elections, and then you call that pragmatism, well, then the obviously pragmatic thing to do is vote Republican. I mean, that's just
right.
Just the way it is.
Yep.
But if you say, well, yeah, I mean, yes, because we do political shit. We support candidates. You know what I mean? Like, we have people who manage campaigns and all that shit. However, the political thing is not the primary value. It's the message. It's the worldview. It's the ideas. It's how do we get what we have to say and inject it into the wider culture. You know what I mean? Like, that's, I think, the really important thing, because, I think some people think this is like if we just put out the right press release, we're going to become the majority. But, so I think, and again, it comes down to Ron Paul versus Gary Johnson, essentially. If you want to kind of get the two archetypes, what happened with Ron Paul? I mean, even listen to his origin story. He always talks about how, I told my wife, they ended Bretton Woods. I'm like, we're on a road to financial ruin, and I'm going to run because this needs to be talked about. Nobody talks about it. And that was his goal. I'm going to go out there and tell the truth about this thing that nobody's talking about that's important. And his wife said, don't do that. You might win. Ron laughs at her. Then he wins because he wasn't being political. He was just trying to be himself and tell the truth. And then what happens is if you're authentic and you just put faith in what you have to say, the results end up being better than if you chase the thing.
Right.
You get what I'm saying? Like if you chase the power.
Why was he
chase
so
the
unique
votes.
in that? He was nobody else came even close to that. Obviously,
because the culture is primarily political. That's how they think. They think that what we're doing is politics when really it's guerrilla cultural warfare. That's what we're actually doing. Now, I'm not saying put it this way. I believe that there's a very good chance that if we adopt what I'm saying, that we could end up getting more votes than if we chase the votes. And I think that's exactly what you saw with Ron Paul. I mean, look what happened. Where's the Gary Johnson movement?
Larry,
you know what I mean? Like
Larry, he brought Larry in.
Okay, but where's the Larry Sharp movement?
Fair enough.
I like Larry Sharp. Larry Sharp ran a very good campaign. He grew the party in New York, but at the end of the day, he ran that. His primary goal, in my opinion, is he wanted ballot access for New York. Now they don't have it anymore. It's gone. So what's the lasting effect? Nothing, because you treated it primarily political.
Yeah. Oh, man. Would you consider... Look, I've heard a lot of talk lately about the difference, because unity is the new word, which I like too, man. There's certainly a place for that. Not for Nick Sarwark. That guy can get fucked. But they're talking about... There's a difference between a blue-pilled libertarian or a bitch-ass libertarian or a Prague libertarian. Like I hate to throw out all these different categories, but I hate to also paint with a broad brush, and they're not all the same. And, I'm down to break bread with pretty much anybody except a libertarian who shits on Ron Paul.
So I've said this a lot of times. For me, the issue in the party is not actually primarily ideological. It's not. If you look at the Prags, if you go to the website and you look at what the Prags are offering, it's a very needed thing. Like it is a valuable thing. Mm-hmm. It is something that needs to be filled. Like it's here's how to work a CRM. Here's how to file to run for office. Here's how to build a campaign. Here's all and again, yes, that's political, but it is needed because again, we do political shit. We're just realistic and say we have to focus the political stuff at the bottom where we actually can win and nullify the feds.
Maybe the guy who can run the meeting doesn't have to be the face job too.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Okay. So the problem isn't the Prags per se. Like it's the fact that the Prags leadership is extremely low character people.
Yeah.
It's not an ideological problem. It's a character problem. It's a people who never had to deal with competition, don't know how to deal with competition. Like they don't compete with me. They just call me racist and think it's going to stop at some point because they've never had to deal with competition. It's their little club.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and they've owned it for about 15 years now. And so there's no impetus on them to have to rise to the occasion. And so again, I will work with anybody. I have worked with everybody. I've worked with progressive groups on shrooms. I've worked with conservative groups on guns. Inside the party, I've worked with Prags. We fund Prags. We've helped Prags win. We've helped Rads win. And worked with them on issues. We will work with everybody, with anybody that is a good character.
Yeah.
If you're calling me an anti-Semite, I don't believe that you're a good character because you're lying. And you're trying you're not trying, and you're not saying that because you want to solve a problem, because you think I have this problem that you want to solve, because if you did that, you would approach me, you would talk to me rationally, and you would say, I have these thoughts and concerns, let's work it out. And then you would accept what I have to say as if maybe I'm telling the truth.
Right.
And there's none of that with the small group of people. And again, this isn't even the majority of any of these groups. It's not. It just happens to be the people who stand to lose position status and all of that stuff. So yeah, I will work with that. The only exception is I will not work with socialists in the group or in the party.
Right.
That is, I will not do it. I will. If you're a socialist here in the party and you want me to work with you, leave the party, and I'll work with you the second you leave the party.
Exactly.
And
you just can't have the name, right? This is our name. You can't have the name. Well,
let me. Here's the example I like to use for my thought process there. How do you think the Green Party wants a green future, right? Like they want a green future. I want a green future is different than I'm a socialist. Okay? So let's say me and you and the Mises Caucus said, fuck all this LP shit. We'll own the Green Party tomorrow if we just went into the Green Party and started saying, hey, you want a green future? The way to do that is laissez-faire capitalism. We've got to get rid of all these regulations. We need to let the geniuses, get to the market with their ideas and get capital investment as easy as possible. And they're going to build the machines that get all the plastic out of the ocean and all this shit. What do you think would happen? They would say, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
That's not
a really
about.
Good story, though, and perhaps something to consider.
You get my point. My point is
absolutely.
They're overtly socialist. They're overtly not in line. I mean, there's certain
part of me thinks
like
it's a
criminal
huge
justice.
Part of me thinks it's a huge troll. Like if they can you imagine the pleasure that they would get out of like a group of people built a thing, and here comes this group that just siphoned off all the energy that they created and used their ballot access and used all their shit. Right.
Well, the point that I'm making here is, what is a coalition? How does a coalition get built? It doesn't get built, so I would say a coalition gets built. So and I've actually had these conversations with shroom people, because that's a very progressive movement. You build a coalition by two people not coming together blindly, but you have to come together being very honest and upfront and accepting of who you are, what your differences are, and setting that aside because we agree on this one issue. Maybe not even for the same reason, but we do agree on this issue. And basically say, I'm not trying to change you. You are not changing me. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That is a little bit different from saying, I'm going to join the Libertarian Party and say I'm a socialist. I'm going to run for chair. I'm going to try to seize control of the messaging and all of that and basically force my bullshit down the throat of something that is opposed to what I am. And that's what I mean when I say, what if we join the Green Party?
Right.
You know what I mean? We don't belong there. That's not who we are. It's a completely different culture, a completely different worldview. We don't belong there. So why would we do it?
What do you think's wrong in our bylaws or in our, perhaps it's the culture, or just we're too open and inclusive?
It's culture more than... it's the culture more than everybody.
In 2018, we had an open communist or libertarian socialist on...
No, he's a communist.
Okay,
yeah, he is a communist.
So he was on the stage competing to chair the party as a communist. So how did that happen?
To me, it's what I was. Well, there's a few ways that it happened, but it all boils down to a loser mentality. Basically, some people thought it was funny because you had prags, and to their credit, it worked. But you had some prags that voted to put him on the debate stage to fuck with Josh, and they thought that was funny. You know what I mean? Instead of saying no, we're going to be on C-SPAN, we actually care about what we believe, and we care that other people see that we're about liberty, and we can't have this. Mm-hmm. So it's that, that's part of it. And the other part of it is there's no standards. You know what I mean? There's no standards. It's I'll take anybody. I don't care if you're a communist if you just get these signatures.
Right.
Just get the signatures, and you can be anything. Unless you want to take, run for leadership position, and I don't agree with you, then you're an anti-Semite. But if you stay in line and you're a communist and you support the status quo, we'll take anybody. That's it right there. It's this desperation for quantity over quality, which again kind of goes back to the whole vote chasing versus tell the truth thing. You know what I mean? It's they'll sit here and tell you, Gary Johnson's the greatest thing that happened in this party. He got 4.3 million votes. And that's true. It's true. It is the biggest number of votes.
Right?
Where they at? At. Even it only raised 7,000 members, of which there's less than 2,000. It might even be less than 1,000 left. The less than 2,000 figure was the number at the beginning of last year. Right. I don't know what that number is now, but they brought in 7,000 or 8,000. It was 1,600 as of March of 20, and it could be less now. So they're gone. And then we put in a libertarian. Now, Jorgensen, I think Jorgensen deserves some credit. like I do think Jorgensen. I'm well aware of all of the problems and the messaging problems and the blue pill and all that stuff. Totally agree. However, I do think Jorgensen represents significant forward progress because before we were blue pilled and either not libertarian or barely libertarian.
Yeah.
Now we're blue pilled and libertarian.
Yeah.
So we're back.
And we got Spike Cohen with JoJo
yes.
too. I think that's amazing.
Yes. And Spike has turned into a star. The likes that I'm not saying he's reached the heights that Harry Brown reached, but he's the star. Like, stars don't emerge out of the party. Who are all the libertarian stars? It's Ron Paul, it's Thomas Massey, it's Justin Amash, it's right. Like all of this stuff. People who are Republicans, party wise anyway.
He came out of the party. Yeah, that's special.
He came out of the party, and the only stars that I can remember that ever came out of the party, or at least in modern history, is Harry Brown. After him, the closest thing was Larry Sharpe. And now I would say Spike has reached heights that Larry did not reach. I don't think he's reached quite Larry Brown levels, but he could. He's young.
Mm-hmm. He's pretty much a regular contributor on Kennedy at this point. I mean,
right?
It's great. It's really great.
Right. So yeah, basically we want quantity versus quality, and I'm saying that the base is the most important thing, and we don't treat it that way. We treat the base like we have the word libertarian in the name. If you don't like it, it's on you. We don't have to treat you like a customer. You're the problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's just wrong. That's just wrong. And that's why we're getting the reaction that we're getting, because the movement actually, the movement wants a libertarian party that it can be proud of.
Yeah, I know it does. Trust me. That's why I'm here with you, man. Since we're on Spike, the first time I was introduced to him was through Vermin Supreme, who I think is really fascinating, and if I got the chance to smoke a joint with him, I'd really enjoy it, and I think he's cool, and I love that he's bringing attention to the party.
I've smoked a joint with him, yeah.
Dude, you get to do all the cool shit. I want to party with you! But my question is, and it's no offense to him, man, because like I said, I think he's fucking awesome and really creative. I love people like that. But some people didn't think it was that cool that he rose to prominence within the party like he did and ran for president, and kind of some of the same overlap with some of the socialists running his crowd. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, how you thought that was.
I very much so like Vermin the person. I don't like Vermin the representative. Because basically I will say I do feel some like kindred spirits there.
Yeah.
Because I think what fueled a lot of the Vermin thing is it's almost like Bernie supporters, where it's like, you got some of the problems right, you're pointing out the right problems, but goddamn, the prescription is terrible. like right. Basically what they're saying is, we've watered down, yes, we've moderated, yes, we've been mainly political, yes, so then let's make ourselves a complete fucking joke as the counter response to that. And it's like,
burn it down.
Yeah, it's nihilistic. Yeah. And I don't think he would agree with that characterization, but that's how I see it, because but I think there's evidence that I'm right, and I think it's all in the numbers, because Vermin Supreme, you might be able to make an argument that Vermin's reach was more than all of the other candidates put together.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go, I don't know that that's true. I'm just going to accept that proposition. Let's assume that's true. Why didn't that produce a great increase in membership? That's not to say that he brought nobody, but it wasn't as many members as Jacob Hornberger brought, and Jacob Hornberger probably he might not have even been second largest reach. Pool is more important than reach. So if you have massive reach to an incompatible audience, you might as well not reach anybody. If you have small reach to a very compatible audience and the pool is strong, that is going to be more effective than the wide reach. And Hornberger, he might not be the most well-known or the most popular member of the club, but make no mistake, he is a member of the club. He has been friends personally with Judge Knapp for 30 years. He has been friends personally with Ron Paul for 30 years, with Lou Rockwell for 30 years. You know, the Future of Freedom Foundation has been around for like 30 years. He was writing for Fee before that. He is a staple in this movement.
Yeah.
That's why. Like, he was pulling some of the older elements of the movement in. Hornberger destroyed all of the straw polls.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, that's not the delegate, that doesn't matter, and there's a certain element of truth in that, but it matters if you're looking at which way the wind's blowing in the parties.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so that much was true. He really did Hornberger brought in something like 1,500 people on 60 grand. Joe Jorgensen brought in something like 3,000 members on, 3 million?
Ooh.
And then that's why they have to do this ridiculous arguments of like, well, if you look at the price per vote, it was a smash hit. I mean, only an idiot can't recognize that. And again, it just goes into this: what is the primary value? Is it the votes or is it the people?
Right.
So obviously the big thing is 2022. That is going to be the Alamo. I think. I think the dying screeches of the old paradigm are going to hit their high but last thing right there. So we are mobilizing right now along several domains. We're really focusing on state conventions. We've taken several states. Some of them were takeovers. Some of them were welcomes. You know, like Oklahoma was a welcome. Kentucky was a welcome. New Jersey was a welcome. Washington was last year, but we completely took over Washington. Kentucky seemed like a welcome for the most part. I had said that already. Connecticut, was a welcome. New Hampshire was a takeover. Pennsylvania is going to be a takeover.
That's your home state. How's that one looking, man? You feel pretty confident?
I feel very good.
Feel very good.
Yeah, I feel very good. I don't want to drop numbers or anything like that.
All good.
And leave any breadcrumb trails for any rats to pick up. So we have our event. It's got Dave Smith. It's got Jeff Deist. It's got Scott Horton. Like, it's got a whole bunch of people. And we made that event free for LPPA members, meaning we're losing money on the event, but it's a membership drive.
It's awesome, man.
And it takes members to vote in conventions. Let's just say that. And it's working very well. It's the concept that we were going for there for the membership drive is working very well. They're taking credit for the growth, but that's okay. And so I feel very good about Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a top 4 delegate state. New Hampshire was a huge morale victory, like a morale boost victory. With what happened with Sarwark there, and just the fact that that's kind of one of Vermin's stomping grounds, and we took control of the majority of that board. Nevada is going to be a lot of fun to watch. That is another one that I feel extremely good about. Michigan is going to go very well. I think you guys got a good thing going on in Delaware.
Yep.
I think we got a good thing going on in Idaho. I think we got a very good thing going on in Utah. We have the buddings. I was hoping it would happen this year, but it's not going to happen this year. We've got the beginnings of a very good thing in Wisconsin. Again, we missed the convention by a little bit this year, but Arizona looks very good. And when you consider, again, that the difference between 60-40 and 2020 is 100, it's something like 110, meaning the win number is half plus 1, 56.
Nice.
We're taking all these states, got 1,600 potential or interested delegates. We're making we're making 13,500 a month. I'm going to be working full time starting June 1st. I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good. We have Angela McArdle running for chair of the National Party. She is fantastic.
Yep.
And she's doing better.
Smart.
Tenacious, and she's doing great work that people can see, and she's doing even better work that people can't see.
I believe it.
Like with all of the connections and the networks that she's making, the donors that I think are going to come in after she assumes control, all of that stuff. The messaging that's going to start coming out, which is going to signal a cultural shift in and of itself. That's a big thing. We're also mobilizing along the issues. People are really getting into this whole COVID passport thing. We didn't even get to talk about that, but I guess that's too bad. We've got issue websites up We got emails coming in through them that we're mobilizing. We're real big into psychedelic decrim stuff. We're big into the Second Amendment sanctuary stuff. Got Breonna's Law. We got people who were doing the Defend the Guard Act. Like, we got a guy who got Breonna's Law and Defend the Guard getting ready to get introduced into the state legislature in Maine. Harrison Kemp. I mean, Maine's another one that we took. It's crazy, dude. We're at a point now where we have our monthly team meetings. And basically I start off the meeting saying something to the effect of, tell me the good news of your states. And then that conversation unrolls organically for 40 minutes.
That's great.
And just random people, I'm in Maine and I'm killing it this way. I'm in Jersey and we got Defend the Guard. And I'm in California and we're making a documentary and it's submitted into a film festival. And I've got 40 people coming to my meetings. Holy shit. Okay. And it's just, it's
beautiful, dude.
It's beautiful. And again, one of the big picture ideas that we were going for here is Ron initiated a positive feedback loop with his bravery, with his courage, with his character, with his truth. However, that feedback loop was always destined to die because it was one man, one campaign. So in my mind, the trick here is, if you can get that feedback loop going again, but this time under the guise of an organization, it never has to die. There's no end. You know what I mean? Like, there's no end. It could just go out of control exponentially. And that's what appears to be happening.
Yeah, it does appear to be happening, man. Oh, it's amazing. All right, we'll go ahead and get out of here. But before we do, man, just real quick, tell the people why they should not sit on the sidelines, why they should take human action, and then let's hear where we can get the merch, sign up, do all that stuff.
They should sign up and they should not sit on the sidelines, because if we don't, I think we're entering a very dark time. I mean, the COVID, we probably should have talked about the COVID passport stuff, but COVID passport stuff is very crazy. It's the beginning of a bigger system. This isn't just papers, please, for your COVID vaccine. This is a system of being able to track all of their medical history that any other organization can be plugged into, and then they have it, and then that back end of that system can then start to incorporate, if they ever wanted to, your financial records, and then your travel history, and the everything, and then they've got all of you, and they can turn you off.
So what you're saying is I think Alex Jones was right.
Of course, he was right about most shit.
Most shit.
He was right about and I was honestly, dude, I wish he would stop producing the show and just produce documentaries. I would still to this day recommend his documentaries to everybody, especially the police state documentaries. Yeah. With the way things are going, they're old and shit, but Endgame was rad. Terrorstorm was rad. Matrix of Evil for 9/11 Truth. That shit was with the super corny music, but yeah, man, trillions of dollars are being printed up. Gun control is on the table from the executive branch. What was it, $2 or $3 trillion in tax increases being looked at? COVID passports. I mean, we're entering into a time that I don't know what the other side of it is going to look like if it just goes unabated. Yeah. It can't go unabated. And do I think that we're going to we're going to take over the federal government and we're going to stop it and all that shit? No, I don't. But I do think that we can get the remnant together. I think through that remnant, we can get enough decentralization as to create bastions. And I think we can, and I think through those bastions, we can start to create real freedom and rebuild whatever's going to come after all of this. Because when you're talking $2 trillion are being printed up at a time, when you're talking about $3 trillion in new tax increases, when the economy has been just absolutely devastated, lumber and production goods are all shooting up. The supply of all kinds of technological goods, like PlayStations are gone, graphics cards are gone, chips, like processors are gone. There's still shortages. We're seeing more shortages. The price of food is going up. All of this crazy stuff is going on, and it's all happening together. And the two things that really scare me are the combination of executive gun measures mixed with the COVID passport stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you're talking like you want to disarm me and have me give you papers, and we're not allowed to say that sounds kind of like the Nazis.
Right.
Get out of my face.
Exactly.
That sounds a lot like the Nazis. That sounds a lot like the Nazis. Yeah, and I don't care what you think. I care about not having that happen.
I just have so much respect for people who, I'll take your tagline, man, who take human action, build something, force their way in, and it's just been so beautiful to watch, dude. I'm so grateful. It's part of the reason I'm doing this right now, taking, my own human action. And dude, I really appreciate it, brother. Man, on behalf of all me caucs out there, dude, the thousands of us, man, thank you so much. Yo, everybody, go to lpmisescaucus.com.
Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. You got to go. Sign up. Donate some money if you can. Buy some merch. Misesmerch.com. Is that right?
That's right. Misesmerch.com.
Dude, you got some great stuff in there. That Ron Paul, Be Brave. Be like the
We
man.
need more, but yeah.
Get some more stuff. I seen the baby onesies in there. You guys are crushing it with those. Seen some little ones, though. Mike, I really appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, guys. Guys, I'll see you next time on Dave versus Goliath. Peace.